Hey everyone. So before we get started here, we're going to do a message from our sponsor, Chirp, CHIIRP. What they do is they provide automation to your company. So they do ringless voicemail, text, and email. If you go to a customer's home and you do a really good job of executing the customer performance, but 6 months later they forget your name because you didn't leave a card behind, maybe they threw the card out, well, Chirp makes it impossible for any customer in your database to forget about you. You send them reminders. Hey, we need to do a tune-up. Hey, you're due for your oil change. Hey, we just want to let you know that we're thinking about you and we care that you're a customer of ours and thank you for using our business. Chirp is the best way to reach out to your customer base, and they are a sponsor of this podcast. So go ahead and check them out, CHIIRP.
Welcome to the Ryan and Nate's Business Podcast. Come listen to these two blue-collar business guys. Nate, your go-to automotive repairer, and Ryan, your local heating and air contractor, talk about business, how to help you, and hear stories from our local unsung heroes. Community matters to them, and so does a healthy business. Here's Ryan and Nate.
What is up, everyone? So we have our friend Jack in the studio today. How's it going, Jack?
I'm good.
Good.
So glad to have you, buddy.
Good to be here.
Nate's got a little intro for you.
Yeah, so to introduce you, I wrote this up for you. Hopefully it's flattering. If it's not, it's okay because I don't, it is what it is. Jack, I loved meeting you a couple weeks ago, and Ryan and I immediately were like, I want to hang out with Jack on the podcast. So everyone, Jack Heald is an artist and a businessman. His skill set is vast, including the written and spoken word. He applies it to marketing, podcasting, ad writing, musical and theatrical performances, voiceover work, and much more. His superpower is curiosity, and he loves teaching people what he knows. Jack helps people get from point A to point B by inspiring them, creating connections, and telling stories. He perpetually gives off the fun uncle vibe, which makes you just want to be around him. And it's very, very important. The fun uncle vibe is very different than the creepy uncle vibe. Those are two different vibes. But Ryan and I met Jack.
And you forgot his fashion. Put his fashion in the vibe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. He has a uniform.
Wildly fashionable.
Yeah, the only person I know with a uniform of a top hat and a vest. You just got to love it. We met Jack recently at a Wizard of Ads training, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. It's an odd name for a really fun place.
It's totally not a cult.
And it's definitely not a cult. We learned how to meet business owners in a consulting capacity and identify their big wants, transferring courage so that they can be the best that they can be. So that's what we were there learning together about how to help people. This process is called an uncovery. We'll talk a little bit about that today as well. And so we wanted to bring Jack on the show to share his wisdom. We like him as a person. But I think what I love about you most, I mean, you said this about yourself, but curiosity, that is, I think, your superpower. I agree with that for sure.
I'm insatiably curious. It's been that way my entire life. I used to think it was a curse, and I recently realized, oh my gosh, that's my superpower. That's why yeah.
Has being curious gotten you in trouble if you said it was a curse?
What do you think?
I just want to hear a story, if you have one off the top of your head.
Wisdom is gained by experience. Experience is gained by making poor decisions. Poor decisions is gained by a lack of wisdom. So I made a lot of poor decisions in my life, but I've learned from them.
We can end the podcast with that. That's a magical,
that was pretty good.
brandable chunk there. I like that.
Yeah, we like hanging out with Jack. All right, very good. Well, tell us, Jack, more about what the Wizards of Ads means to you and your business. Call it yourbrand.com.
Wow, that is.
I'm going to let you have the floor for the next 30
question.
minutes.
Holy smoke! Wow. I have deep, long connections to the guy who's the chancellor of the Wizard Academy. And that's how I came into contact with the Wizard of Ads. I'm actually good friends with Daniel Whittington's dad. Daniel's the chancellor of the academy. I've known Brad, golly, we go back more than 40 years. I can remember Daniel as a wee lad. He's a musical prodigy, and I remember him playing a full drum kit at 5-6 years old with a band, and he was really good. And when his dad, Brad, called me, 2016, and said, "Hey, Daniel's got a seat available in the Wizard of or the Wizard Academy class, because of his role. If there's a spare seat available, he can give it away." Now, to the audience, I don't know if that's true anymore. This was 7 years ago. He said, "You want it?" I said, "Yeah, that sounds fun." I knew nothing about any of this, but it was a chance to go hang out with Brad in Austin, and I'm insatiably curious. So that's what introduced me to the Wizard Academy. And it turned out that I had been subscribing to Roy Williams' Monday Morning Memo for like 12 years at that point. And it never registered that Roy Williams' Monday Morning Memo, Wizard of Ads, which is what Roy is known as, and the Wizard Academy all went together. It was just, I didn't make the connection. But Roy's teaching the class, and it just blows my mind. And the particular class I took was called Magical Worlds. It's kind of the cornerstone class of the academy. And one of the things that happens in that particular class is day number 1 is designed to induce a shift in your state of consciousness. And it's a very deliberate, very calculated, complete overload of your senses. With the intended effect being it opens your mind to a new set of possibilities. It's drugs without the drugs. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I was going to ask, or did you take LSD day one?
Nope.
What happens?
Nope.
Because I haven't taken Magical Worlds.
In fact, one of the things that Roy said is tonight, this is a 3-day class, and day number 1, we went for, it started at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and I don't think we quit till maybe 7 at night. And, most business training classes, I've done a lot of them in my career, and the way I like to describe it is they pack 4 hours of content into a week of time.
Yes.
And Magical Worlds packed a semester of content into 3 days. It was overwhelming. I was like hooking your mouth up to a fire hose and just never letting go. And Roy said, "You may have trouble sleeping tonight, or you may have weird dreams. This is normal." And that is, in fact, I didn't have any trouble sleeping, but man, I had weird dreams. So I go through this 3-day class, and at the end of the class, the entire Cult Your Brand training course structure just appeared in my head. Now, what's that all about? Well, when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, my 2 best friends joined a cult and disappeared from my life. And we were all relatively normal, healthy adult males, I thought. None of us had, horrible family problems or horrible life upbringing problems. We were just normal guys with wives and kids, and we were all in business for ourselves. And these 2 guys were we were very close. I mean, we got together early in the morning every week just to hang out and talk and kvetch about life and what it was like learning to be a dad, learning to be a husband, and learning to be a business owner. And for these two guys to join this cult and disappear from my life, it was one of the most traumatic things that had ever happened to me at that time. And being insatiably curious, I had to understand what had happened. And I began studying cult psychology. This is the early 90s, mind you. And that's a deep subject. And when I went to Magical Worlds in March of 2016, I had been studying cult psychology, the psychology of influence, the psychology of persuasion, all of which dovetails with marketing and branding, for 25 years. And all of these ideas were just marinating inside me and percolating around. And I get through this 3-day mind-blowing course at Magical Worlds, and everything coalesces. It all just comes together. The 25 years of study. What is it that makes people that triggers people to make the kinds of decisions that they make? And the thing that the particular question that I really wanted an answer to was, how come after the promise of this cult had been exposed as a bald-faced lie, why did they stay? And as it turns out, first of all, that's a very common experience. And furthermore, the reason that it works, those reasons are directly transferable to us as business owners. And I want to very clearly, I want to make something clear here. Cults have available to them two qualities of tool sets. They have benign tools, passive tools, I call them, and they have malignant tools, which are coercive. As business owners, if you tried to use the malignant coercive tools, you would be out of business overnight, simply because they are so repellent to a potential customer, to a prospect who doesn't have any emotional connection to you. They work for cults because cults first start with these benign tools, these passive tools, and they engage people at the level, at the most fundamental, foundational level of who we are as human beings. And that is, they answer the three most fundamental questions that every human comes into the world asking. And those questions are, who am I? Where did I come from? And why am I here? Cults provide answers to those. And if those answers are emotionally satisfying, it makes it almost impossible to tear yourself away. And that's when the cults begin using the malignant, coercive kinds of things, where they get engaged in sleep deprivation and family separations. And I could go on and on and on. If anybody's got any experience with cults, you know what I'm talking about.
So with the cult, it's who am I? Why am I here? What are the three? Sorry.
Well, it's not just cults. It's, I mean, as human beings, we all will find answers to these questions, because they are the three fundamental driving questions that every human has to have answered. We cannot tolerate a lack of answer to these questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? So that has to do with identity, origin, and purpose. And everybody has answers to those questions. Those answers will range from incredibly deep, profound, eternal things you can build not just a life but a legacy on, all the way to as flimsy as they can possibly be. They turn to nothing under the slightest pressure. But the reality is, we as humans cannot function if we don't have some kind of answer to those three questions. And so I know it sounds like I've gone a million miles off track here, but I spent 25 years at that point contemplating and reading. I've read voraciously everything from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning to Eric Hoffer's the True Believers, all kinds of advertising, marketing insights, and then my own experience with my friends. I think we spent 3 years arguing about whether or not joining this cult was a good idea. And at the end, they did it, and I didn't. So when I get through Magical Worlds, and this all just comes together in my head, it's like I see it all. And from that point, it was just a matter of writing it down. And that happened, I think, because of that combination of 25 years of marinating on it, and then this 3 days of just having things done to my brain that I had no idea could be done. So I'd been writing copy as a, I am not wired to work in corporate America. So I was a freelance copywriter.
No, really?
Yeah, I know, it's shocking. I did have a job with corporate America at one point, and I was killing it. I was really, really good at what I did. And my customers, my billing, it all said so. The problem was I was me, and you see how I'm dressed, and I have a personality. And I got a review. My manager one time gave me my annual review, and he marked me down because he said I was too colorful. Anyway, so back to the Wizard of Ads. I've been writing copy, marketing copy, for a while now, and because of my exposure in Wizard Academy to Roy Williams, I realized, oh my God, I love what these people do. I love how they do it. That would be so cool to be a Wizard of Ads partner. But first of all, I didn't have any idea how that would happen. Yeah. And secondly, my opinion was that I did not belong in that echelon of people. These were the best of the best, and the stories prove it. So that was just kind of a dream I stuffed onto the back shelf of my wish list and got on with my life. I picked up a client, an HVAC client, actually, an HVAC company as a client several years ago, and using the lessons I learned from going to the Wizard Academy and also just devouring Roy Williams' 3 books, The Wizard of Ads, Magical Worlds, and Secret Formulas of the Wizard of Ads. I taught myself how to write radio ads, and it was kind of the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. I fell in love with radio as a kid. I can remember I grew up in Northeast Oklahoma, about 40 miles north of Tulsa. And the only rock and roll station that we could pick up where I lived was KELI 1460 out of Tulsa. And that was my first exposure to rock and roll and my first exposure to my radio. I can remember my mom listening to what is now considered adult easy listening while she was making breakfast for us in the kitchen. But it wasn't music that mattered to me. But at some point I discovered rock and roll and I fell in love with radio. And I can remember thinking, God, it would be so cool to do that, to be on the radio. But life took me another direction and I didn't think about it. So I end up with this gig running marketing for a client, and he is perfect for radio. It's the client I've always wanted. And so I pitched him. I said, hey, if you really want to go where where you say you want to go, the way to get there is with radio. And he said, do it. So I start writing radio commercials, and it's the right, he's the right guy at the right place at the right time. One of the things that in the Wizard of Ads, we know to do is we work with people who are going to be successful anyway. And I just got lucky with this guy. He's going to be successful anyway. And, you know, I can help him be more successful. Anyway, started writing ads, wrote a bunch of ads, picked up other radio clients, wrote more radio ads, blah, 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 blah. And about a year ago this month, in Roy Williams' Monday morning memo, which at this point I've been subscribing to for, 18 years, long freaking time. He says that he's looking for, that the Wizard of Ads business is growing, and he's looking to add partners. And I'm like, what?
Oh, wow.
And basically, he said, if you think you've got what it takes, send the scripts of your 12 best radio ads, and we'll see. Well, I still...
it's an interview process.
Yeah, right? I have... I've kind of been working... I've been a lone wolf my whole life. And... that little nagging voice in the back of my head says, there's no way you're remotely good enough for this. But hey, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Take the shot.
Yeah.
So I went through, my several years worth of backlog of radio commercials I'd written, picked 12 that I thought were really good, sent them in. And I think a month later, I was on the phone with Roy Williams, and he's saying, hey, you want to be a partner? Yes. So that's how it all came about.
Man.
And I've been talking for about 30 minutes now.
No, not quite. Not quite.
That's what we want. We want to hear you talk.
Yeah. This, while you're talking, I realized like your story of being curious about cults and how they work. And then your love for people and telling people stories, and you put those things together. Like if the idea of studying cults and finding something, you use the word, the benign and malignant pieces of cults, your curiosity allowed you to get something positive out of even a cult in order to use it to help people. I just find that interesting.
Well, thanks.
When you're talking, it almost seemed like you made your mess your message. I don't know if that resonates at all, but
that's a cool way to say it.
Yeah,
I hadn't thought of that. Made my mess my message. Yeah.
Oftentimes, some of our best work can come out of our deepest pain.
Well, I regularly tell people the worst things to happen to me were the best things to happen to me, and I mean it. I'm not just running my gums. I can look back, and things that I thought would have killed me before I went through them have turned out to be without question the biggest blessings in my life, and I'm immensely grateful for them, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. So
it's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're going back to the Wizard Academy. Are you just going back for the Magical Worlds this year? Are you going to any other classes?
I'm taking my wife to Magical Worlds. She has her own business as well, and I've told her you got to do this class. It is so cool, and she wants to do it. So we're going to Magical Worlds, and I'm really excited for her to be introduced to, she's kind of gotten an oblique exposure to the principles that are taught in that class just through hanging around me and me jabbering. But it's, to have it laid out and orderly, and for her to get to experience that first day of the fire hose hooked up to your nostrils, it doesn't sound fun. I don't.
I felt like the class we took, I had a fire hose in my mouth. It took us 2 days to decompress, and like we came back on Saturday. We didn't talk about it again until not even mention it again until Wednesday. Just of all the information that we had.
So it's the best.
Wrote out all our notes.
It's the best business school in America. It is. You know, I haven't been to all of them, but I've been to enough business training to be able to say you get way more in way less time than you get anywhere else.
Yeah, and you're surrounded by the best in the world.
That's kind of cool, isn't it? You know, that group of people we were in that class with you just look around and it's like every single one of these people are seriously
wildly
cool.
Accomplished.
Yeah. They are.
Yeah, very cool. Very nice. Everyone's very nice too. So
that's a lesson in life when it comes to business or anything else, is just getting yourself around the right people to keep you sharp, keep you. I mean, you can apply your superpower of curiosity to that group. You could sit in any lunch table, any break, stand next to any person at the cappuccino machine, and get some kind of nugget out of that. It was great.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, I literally just stood next to Roy just to listen to him talk to others. I didn't know what to even ask the man. I just knew if I hung around him, someone else would know what to ask him, and I can just listen.
It's astonishing the stuff that he knows. Not just the depth, but the breadth of depth. If that makes sense. You know, if you live for 60 years, you ought to know a lot about something. You know, the problem is, I don't know if it's a problem. What doesn't work for me is knowing a lot about just a really narrow area of expertise. We live in this extraordinary universe, this extraordinary world. I was sitting out on my back patio right out here yesterday, just looking around, and it's just gorgeous. And there's so much to know and so much to learn and so much beauty to engage with. And it's really cool because Roy he's got tremendous breadth of knowledge, and it's deep in all these places too. I mean, he knows things like neurochemistry, brain biology, color theory, and he's got a voracious is probably the wrong word, an expansive knowledge of the visual arts and he's the world's highest paid ad writer.
How much of that knowledge do you think he got from doing uncoveries? Like, one of the big takeaways that I took from the class of interviewing businesses and learning about their needs and their friction points so that we can help them really discover what it is that they need to do next to take their business to the next level. That uncovery process, a big piece of that was getting curious about jargon that you don't know, asking questions, not being embarrassed to ask questions when you're talking to somebody from a different industry than you're familiar with, and then trying to get some clarity on those questions. Like, I wonder how much of his knowledge came from just asking good questions.
Well, the reality is nobody can teach you anything. You have to learn it yourself. You know, that's one of the big misconceptions that is rampant in our society, is that we have an education problem. No, we have a learning problem. Everything that you've learned, Ryan, and everything that you've learned, Nathan, you learned it. You know, there might have been somebody talking, or you might have been reading the writing that somebody else made, but until you engage yourself with it, there's no learning that happens. It's just sound passing your ears, like the sound of an airplane flying over. Once you engage it, then you begin learning. And curiosity is a really powerful fuel for learning. And I don't think it's disputable that Roy is insanely curious, and that curiosity has allowed him to learn a whole lot from a lot of teachers. But man, I'm going to sound like I'm tooting my own horn now. But I guess I really do see the world this way. If you're not curious about a subject, you're not going to engage with it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's something that stood out to me meeting you and your wife as well. So I'll make a general statement. I don't want to offend anyone, but it is just the fact when I meet most people that are from your age group, I find that they are like petrified pieces of wood.
Late 20s?
Yes. Actually, most of us, by the time we're in our late 20s, yes, we are. Our knowledge set is just kind of set. And I think something that just so refreshing about hanging out with you guys is how interested you are in other people and learning of their stories and asking questions. You know, if a conversation is tossing a ball back and forth, you toss the ball really, really well back and forth. And
it's fun.
And it's not, it seems like you're having a blast and learning the whole time. So I know it stands out because there's just not a lot of people that are like that.
Well, and to follow on that, I think it's sad when people lose their curiosity. You're right. There oftentimes when folks get into their, yes, I'm over 60.
Some of my favorite conversation with you was when we talked about the different generations. Like Ryan is from, you're a millennial, right, Ryan?
I think so.
I think so. And I'm a late Gen Xer. I think I was born in 79. I'm going to guess you're a late boomer. Are you a late boomer?
Technically, it depends on who's doing the definition. There's a very small cadre of people born between 1961 and 1966 that are known as Generation Jones. I don't know why.
Okay.
I was born in 61, and I've never identified with the baby boomers, but I'm too old to be a Gen Xer. Okay. And as it turns out, apparently those of us born in that area, that time frame, tend to have that same generational mismatch between what we feel inside and where whoever makes those rules placed us. So Generation Jones, there's also there's a book called The Fourth Turning that talks about different generations, and he places the generation immediately following the baby boomers. He calls us the 13ers. We are technically the 13th generation in American history, which is why they calls us the 13ers.
Interesting.
And each generation has its own particular assumptions and comes to the world with some unquestioned things that is just it's the environment in which they live that they don't even notice, in the same way that a fish doesn't notice water.
That was the conversation that I was remembering, because we were talking about how each of our generations viewed things like vulnerability differently.
God, you guys, I got to tell you what you guys said to me as we were having that conversation. I can't remember whether it was Nathan or Ryan, but I'm drilling down. I'm trying to understand what's going on. What is the thing that is just taken for granted with your generation that my generation is blind to? And one of you said, we bleed in public. And I just went, oh my God, that was, and it, I have been chewing on that and chewing on that and chewing on that. That was profound. I thought that was a profoundly powerful insight. And maybe for you guys, it's like, hey, whatever. But
no, I think technology, how old we are when different technologies come into play, has a big influence on the way our generations work. And so the technology that allows us to bleed in public was not available to you when you were growing up at those key moments. And so that definitely influences the way we connect and how we view connection. And that all has a very clear bearing on the way you write ads, right? When you're communicating a business's story to connect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My favorite kind of company are locally owned, locally operated companies, and that serve their clientele locally as well. And the contrast would be a primarily digital company that primarily serves their customers through a digital means online. Even if my wife's company is not the kind of company I would choose to work with. She's an apron manufacturer, but she sells all over the country. That's a different type of marketing that you need to do to attract the right kind of clientele. But with this, when you're serving a local customer, where you're typically face to face with them, whether it's a product or a service, and you're delivering it face to face, you build a different story, a different type of story. And necessarily, there are things you need to know about the client and the client's customers that are actually different when your target market is the world or the country.
Right.
So yeah, that's part of what drives that.
What success stories do you have, from a company, and maybe it's the HVAC company you're working with now, or maybe another one where, they were a really great company, but the world just needed to hear it. There can be a big debate in like what's a good radio ad versus a bad radio ad. We can get into relational versus transactional and that kind of thing, but what success stories do you have from radio?
I've got two that spring to mind immediately. One is this HVAC client that I'm still working with, and I'll tell you a little bit about them in a minute. My first really big success was actually the opposite kind of client. It was a digital client. This guy sold a financial product and a piece of software that he was rolling out, never been sold before. Hired me to write his entire marketing campaign for him, and I wrote it was the full stack of digital marketing, email, video ads, online workshops, everything that you can deliver online marketing wise. And we rolled that campaign out and sold $1.5 million worth of software in 6 months. And for a small company that hadn't sold this product before, that was pretty smoking awesome. That was when I realized I'm pretty good at this. And then this HVAC client I've been working with them now for it'll be 3 years in March. In fact, they hired me just as the pandemic hit, and they didn't have.
Are they the Moist people?
These are the folks that I did the Moist ad for. Yeah.
The most time as I've ever heard that word in a 30-second chunk in my life.
We had so much fun with that. They didn't even have a GM when they hired me. The company was formed by buying, I don't know, 6 little mom and pop shops that were all 1 and 2 man shops. And it was kind of a crazy idea, it was, if you can imagine merging 6 different customer bases and different company cultures without a head guy to say, this is the way we're going, this is what we're doing. But they did it. They hired me, and it took me a couple of 3 months just to get my get a feel for who they were, what they were all about. And then we started running ads, started writing radio ads. And I think our first one was end of second quarter, first of third quarter, 2020. And this last year, we grew 35%. The year before that, the growth was, I can't remember, it was 30 or 40%. But they have gone from being just kind of a typically average small, 3 or 4 trucks kind of company to they are now getting noticed nationwide because of, and let me point out, they hired a GM in that June, and that's when I started running the ads. Without this guy, it never would have happened because he's just bloody brilliant. He's fantastic. So, operations and marketing, they gotta both be right. The best marketing in the world will not save a poorly run organization. And Kyle runs.
That was going to be my question. My question was going to be, what was the secret sauce that made them work with that weird hatching of an idea of merging them together? So would you say like the big deal was having those two pieces in place?
Yeah. And you gotta have somebody who knows. I want to tell this story real quick. It's not my story, but it's seriously cool. So,
you're a storyteller. It's okay. It's good.
Kyle's the guy. In fact, I'm writing an ad that tells this story right now. It's going to drop probably here in the next couple of months. Kyle was an Army Ranger. He was in Army Ranger training, and parachutes. Kyle's the GM this HVAC company, and jumping out of airplanes is part of their job. So they're doing the jump out of airplane thing, and about 50 feet above the ground, his parachute collapses and he falls to the ground. And when he's telling me the story, I'm like, why aren't you dead? And he said, well, I fell through some trees and they broke my fall. And I'm like, who are you? He's your age, by the way, Ryan. I think he's late 20s, early 30s.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, and then what? He says, and then I got up and hiked to our rendezvous point. I said, weren't you hurt? He said, well, I found out later that I broke both hips.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, you hiked, I don't remember how many miles it was. It was miles. It wasn't feet to the rendezvous to the rendezvous site. And I said, what in the world? Why did you do that? He said, I had a job to do. I had to find a way.
So are you using the story in their ad?
This story is going in the ad.
This is the magic of what you guys do is you pull that story out.
And I realized that Kyle, when I look at the organization he's put together, he found a way to hire the kinds of people that would find a way to deliver the promise that they'd made to the market, to the customer. 2 broken hips didn't stop him from hiking and joining his squad at the rendezvous point. 2 broken, he fell 50 feet out of the sky, broke 2 hips, and did it anyway. In other words, we don't accept excuses. We find a way.
Yeah.
And so that's the secret sauce. And then you just got a blabbermouth like me who tells the story and makes it work. So I make the promises. I write the checks and Kyle cashes them.
So I don't know Kyle, but I'm gonna. I've heard a couple of these stories from partners like yourself from Wizard of Ads, and the way these uncoveries work, where you interview people. So again, I don't know Kyle, but I'm imagining Kyle doesn't walk around with that story on his sleeve, telling everyone about it. Because I've never met a man in the military or a woman in the military who brag about themselves. It's all about team. It's all about they definitely diminish their own role often. So it takes someone like you to find their story and pull it out and say, hey, this is not just a story that happened, but this is a story that communicates what the client can expect from this company with this kind of person and their character at the helm of it. That is an amazing superpower that you have. And every wizard story that I heard is some version of that, of finding that amazing story and pulling it out.
Well, you got to have amazing people, and as I watched Kyle work there in the first couple of months that we were together, and I was like, this kid is way too good to be this young. What is going on? I had to pry that story out of him with a crowbar. It was just,
yeah.
And once he's telling me, I'm like, and by the way, you got the distilled, condensed version. It's way more mind blowing than what I delivered, but I've got 60 seconds in a commercial to deliver the story. So I had to find out, what are the important things I can put in and what have I got to leave out? It's nutty. It's crazy. And once I heard the story, then what I was seeing before me made sense. Oh, I see why he's able to do what I've seen him do. That's the kind of person he is. He told me more stories. It took me a while. Some of them he just won't let me tell. And it's just this deep well of kindness and care for other people, and doesn't want to make anybody feel bad or look bad. They're great stories, and I really want to use them, but he said, no, you can't use that one. So,
yeah, Nate and I have a client we're taking on. I told Nate, I said, worst case scenario, he's got this much money in the bank, and we'll be able to work with that. It's not much, but we'll figure it out on the financial end. And we had a phone call with him yesterday, and I was like, hey, you don't have to tell us what you have in the bank. We just want to make sure that your infrastructure can handle bringing us on. And he said 25% of what I thought was his minimum. He just came out and said, this is how much money I got in the bank. And I was like, oh man, you can't. Boy. I don't even know how you're going to put gas in your car tomorrow, but we'll figure it out. But Nate and I are determined to help this guy, and I think it'll work out because of the things you just said. I think he's got a good heart. And we're not ad writers. You're the king of that. Anybody needs ads written, direct them towards the Wizards. We don't have the training that you guys do, nor the expertise, nor a lot of the things we need. But Nate and I know how to help people, and that's what we're doing with this guy. We're going to figure out a way to help him make him have a good business. So,
yep,
yeah, I think what you guys do, and oftentimes I'm just ignorant, and I listen to these ads. I hear these ads. I just assume someone made this stuff up, and maybe some of the ads that I hear, right, that's exactly what they do. But to take the time to learn someone's story and then tell it and be there. I don't know if this term it works or not for you, but to be a hype man, to hype somebody else up, that's kind of, on the humble side, not wanting to do that themselves, or not knowing how to do that. That is a great act of service.
Well, and to take that thought further, most people are so busy running their businesses, doing what's got to be done day to day on an operations basis, customer service, sales. They're not really aware themselves of what makes them extraordinary. Mm-hmm. My experience is that guys who are really good at running a business, they can say, oh, well, I have this system, or I have these operations, or I've got this sales training or whatever. And they're blind to the extraordinary qualities that they possess that make all that stuff work, that make it special. Operations can be copied, systems can be copied, procedures can be copied. And if it can be copied, it's not going to make you special. Why are you special? Yeah, well, it's you. It's your values and your experiences and your beliefs about what matters and what doesn't matter. It goes back to those three questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? And our job when we're getting to know a new client is to find out, who is this person? Where did they come from? And why are they here? Why do they believe they're here? And when you find those things, that's when those stories bubble to the surface. And that's where the gold is. And most folks, you're too busy running your business to do all that woo-woo stuff. That's where the gold is.
Yep. And that's what this podcast is about too. It's you're a special guest that we brought in. But going forward, probably the majority of the people that we're going to have as guests are going to be business owners to hear their story, because we find that a lot of times, like they're doing heroic work, creating something for a service to help a client, a place to call home that employees can call home, taking great risks to do that, and they're heroes. And we want to be able to tell their stories because there's not a lot of people telling their story. Or giving them a platform to do it. So,
and that's
exciting.
That's the magic.
Yeah. So, how do people connect with you, Jack? If they want Jack to be their hype man, how do people connect with you?
What's the link to your business?
My website is Cult Your Brand, Cult, C-U-L-T, cultyourbrand.com. Drop me an email, cultyourbrand@jackheald.com. And you can follow me on Twitter, JackHeald5. Apparently there were 4 other Jack Healds. I don't understand why.
No, there is just one Jack Heald. My goodness.
Yes.
Hey, it's good to connect with you guys again.
Yeah, thank you.
So am I going to see y'all in March and at the Magical Worlds?
Yes, you will.
Awesome.
I think so. Awesome. Maybe even some wives, if we can pull it off.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. My wife will be there. That'd be cool.
Right.
All right, man.
Very good. All right, Jack. We'll see you.
See ya.